Before I say hello and welcome you and just open a little bit, let's begin by lying down with something under the knees. So we're gonna be working with this large bolster for a while, up the body to the shoulders. So if you don't have the bolster, just use some pillows and just mimic what I do with the bolster. So just something to add some firmness and some support, and you can use them and modify them along the way. But the way I just simply want to start is for you to lie flat on your back and just have the bolster under the knees, just so the hips can relax mostly. If you're going to put something under the head, just put something soft for comfort, not to elevate the head up so we disturb the relaxation of the upper spine. So we'll just start this way, just with elevating the hips a bit. Yes, welcome to this lovely, quiet, meditative yin yoga practice. And one thing I should say about it is the really special thing about this practice, and something that I continue to appreciate after all of these years I've been doing it, is that it doesn't really matter if you have experience. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing yoga or even this yoga. It doesn't matter what you know about the scriptures or the path, and it doesn't really matter, because each and every time we come into an asana, each and every time we just bring a container to explore the body, in a way we're doing it for the first time. Yes, your body is extremely dynamic and fluid and alive and non-linear. So what we're really attempting to do is let go of any sense or need of technique, any need or sense that we're going to accomplish something, and just see if we can relax enough and rest enough to have whatever experience we need to have, to listen, to to really give the body the respect and the time it needs. Things that might be hidden, things that might be below the surface. So we just come into the body itself as a grounding and with great respect. So just make yourself comfortable and allow your breath to calm down, allow your mind to calm down. And just appreciate that we have this capacity to explore this inner world, this inner visceral, somatic world, this inner emotional world, and the inner world of our psychology. And I would just like to start off with a simple quote, a line from a Radiohead song that I was listening to yesterday. And I was just listening to it, relaxing. And this one particular line just really caught my heart. I just found it to be so beautiful. From a song called The Numbers, if you know Radiohead, the lyric is, "The future is inside us. It is not somewhere else. It is not somewhere else. The future is inside us." now the exploration of yoga. One of the things that becomes increasingly apparent to us as we, at least we have the opportunity to study the inner workings of the body, the systems and the processes, the hormonal system, the glandular system, the digestive system, all of our systems, our immune system. What becomes so clear and apparent is that what is going on the inside affects what's happening on the outside. So very often when we get drawn out by the trickery of our senses, you might say, that we get preoccupied with what's going on in our outer world, our outer reflections. The yoga is really inviting us. It's a very deep and profound invitation to explore what's going on the inside. Where am I feeling something? Where am I not feeling something? How can I begin to have access to, have accessibility to these inner processes that can be extremely subtle, that kind of layer and weave over time. So I start to listen to this somatic language of my own physical body and begin to see this relationship between what's going on the inside and what's being reflected on the outside. And I don't just mean in the environment, I mean the way that our body feels, the way that we see it, the way that it ages, the way that we digest, the way that we breathe. So let's just begin by drawing our energy inward just with this understanding. And also the reminder when yoga reminds us of something like this, we're not being invited to go on some kind of intellectual journey. We want to honor the limits of our intellect. We want to honor the limits of our thinking and begin to cultivate and sink into a very different kind of language, the language of intuition, the language of our soma, and just the language of how the body just viscerally expresses itself without having to go through a series of mind filters. So let's then move towards our breathing, because often the breathing can allow us to relax that need to interpret or think we know something. And the breath can allow us to just soften to our experience. And it does help to open and hold space for this intuitive awareness. So what I would invite you to do is on the inhalation, feel the inhale as fullness and feel the exhale as emptiness. And if imagery comes to mind, this is perfectly natural. Just as the inhale and the exhale are coming and going, so to say. Same thing with any imagery that appears from your breathing, from your body, from my words. Just let it all just come and go. The inhale as fullness, the exhale as emptiness. So nice and slow, very calm, very deep, no forcing or pushing, but just a very natural, organic breath. The inhalation as fullness, the exhalation as emptiness. And then let us then weave just a little bit of imagery into this. Let us explore the possibility that emptiness and fullness are one, the same thing. So allow the imagery to be the container. Emptiness and fullness are one, the same thing. The inhalation is fullness, the exhalation is emptiness. And what's really quite interesting. We're quite amusing and complicated characters, these human beings that we are, because we can, before class we can talk about the aging process, and we can begin class and end class, and we have interesting schedules and time frames and memories and future projections. But the ground of being, when we relax inwardly and we really allow ourselves this very clear presence of stillness, and let everything just drift away and just allow ourselves to be quiet and still, we can invite that this experience is utterly timeless. And I would suggest that cultivating this stillness and this sense of timelessness is incredibly therapeutic. It's incredibly beneficial to a very deep sense of well-being. And part of cultivating this deeper sense of well-being is allowing this imagery and this breath to just simply intermingle, the fullness and the emptiness just being one, the fullness and emptiness being the same thing. So now what I would like to suggest, and if you're using pillows, just kind of work with it. You'll see or hear what we're doing here. So we're just going to make a slight adjustment here. What I would recommend here is to, you can put your feet on the floor, and you may just want to push the bolster. I'm just using my heels to push the bolster so I can get a hold of it, or your pillows, and then put your feet back on the floor. And if you're able to, just elevate the hips and pull that bolster and or your pillows under the sacral area. So right at the sacrum. We should not be into the lower back. You may feel a little pulling in the lower back, but not a whole lot. Yeah, so we're not in the lower back. The buttocks is off the floor. The sacral area is being fully supported. And then we'll let the legs relax back out. So this will be a nice pulling here on the top of the hips, the psoas, different areas. And now you may, when you stretch the legs out, you may now feel that pulling in the lumbar area. So this is a lovely connection to make as the vertebra of the lumbar spine sets into the sacrum. So this is a very important connection for any lower back, sacral, pelvic pain that you might experience. But let's just relax here, just with the legs out. If you would like to, you can always come back to this breath of feeling the inhale as a quality of fullness, and the exhalation a quality of emptiness, or any other imagery that works. Or you may just trust that the body will breathe itself quite competently, and your awareness may want to just drift and explore and continue to just float and flow inwardly. And allow me to just go from the suggestion of this presence of being utterly timeless to going a little bit more specifically in the way that your body experiences time. This is quite interesting, especially when we're slowing down and compressing into the connective tissue fabric of the body. That basically there's two kinds of time in your body. There's neurological time, which is somewhat linear and works at a very rapid pace, you might say. Yes, it's very quick. But there's also connective tissue time, or quantum time within the body. So this is, in no way is this linear, and it is much, 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 much quicker than neurological time. So we have, you might say, we have a neurological consciousness within our body that basically takes care of business, that allows the brain to communicate with the rest of your body. And then we have connective tissue consciousness. And this consciousness of the connective tissue, of the fabric of the fascia, uses the entire fabric of the body to communicate. So it's in a way, it's this sensory antenna that is communicating body-wide at a level of quantum coherence and it acts as an antenna as well for the body to vibrate outwardly and get information from its environment, but also to receive vibration inwardly. And this is one of the reasons why we don't really, for the most part, although of course there are exceptions, why we don't encourage going into very specific points of discomfort or contraction and trying to analyze or diagnose something. We're much more interested in a feeling of the entire body. How is my body vibrating? How is my body communicating within itself? And can I listen in on this communication? And again, this is below the level of thinking. This is a very, it's harmonic in a way, it's rhythmic in a way. We're listening to the body at this connective tissue consciousness, the consciousness of the living matrix of the whole body. And if your mind is trying to understand what I'm saying, don't even try. Just relax into it. Just trust your body is able to give you feedback, information, messages at a level that does not need to be filtered through the usual channels, you might say. Good. So from here, let's just leave that the left leg relaxed out. Yeah, we're still on the support under the sacral area, and just bring the right leg, bend the knee, and bring the right leg towards your chest. And if you're able to get a hold of it, to interlock your fingers below the knee or at the shin, just kind of start to pull it in and massage into your hips. If you're not able to reach it, you could take a towel and just, or a blanket, and just make yourself a little strap. Or if you have a strap, use your strap. But we just want to bring that knee in. Or if you don't have a strap and you're not able to grab the knee, you could grab behind the right thigh. So that's another nice place to hold on to. But we just want to pull it in, let it maybe roll to the right side a little bit. So just a little bit of passive movement, maybe some circles to feel this interesting connection between the hip flexor and the sacral pelvic area. You may want to also straighten the leg up so the foot's somewhere over the head, and wherever you can grab behind that leg, you can pull it in and see how how fine-tuned your hamstrings are back there. You may want to if you have the leg straight, you may want to let it float off to the right a little bit. So I'm just sort of talking as I'm doing this, but do whatever you would like in terms of movement, going just slowly, just using the movement and the pressure very carefully. So it's always interesting when we introduce a passive motion into the body after it's been still. So what we're doing then is we're bringing the myofascia alive. The stillness, the compression in the stillness is affecting primarily this connective tissue fabric. The movement then activates the muscles, and they're always working together. So we're kind of exploring that. And then when you're ready, you could just let that right leg relax down. Make sure you're still good on your bolster. So we'll let let the right leg relax out now, and we'll just do the same thing with the left leg. So any intuitive movement, pressing it in.
And try not to ignore any feedback that you're receiving from the body. This is really part of learning this language of the body. So often we're attracted to, or the body gets our attention when something's uncomfortable or overly contracted. But the body has a whole spectrum of information that it can give to us. So sometimes something mild or just a little bit of something, you want to pay attention there. And again, if you wanted to open the knee and stretch the foot up to the ceiling and pull that towards you, that would be a possibility as well. Good. So you could relax that left leg back out, and we'll just come here for just a bit longer, just to see if there's any reverberations from that movement. Sink back into the sacral area. If you've had your legs at a hip width distance, you may want to walk the heels out to open the legs past the hips a little bit. So this is nice. Sometimes it'll come to challenge the range of motion of your hip flexors, but at the same time, it's also, in a way, it's kind of pulling those pelvic ligaments a little bit, and this is very interesting. And whatever you're feeling in this pelvic area, it's just a labyrinth of interconnections and weavings and holdings. So to spend this kind of quiet, gentle time in the pelvic area is very, very valuable. And if we become very sensitive, we begin to see that we can explore this area, certainly physically, but also emotionally as well. This connection from this area, this sort of center of gravity, if you will, that spirals up through the solar plexus, through the digestive area, into the heart area. This connection is very real. So what we're feeling physically, what we're feeling emotionally, and then what we're telling ourselves, what we're superimposing on all of this is all just what we're exploring. Okay, so let's put your feet on the floor, and we're going to roll off of this. I'm going to move the bolster up, but I think it's too early to attempt to pass it through the lower back. So I think we better be safe. So we'll just roll off of this bolster and just curl on your side for a bit, and we're going to go back on it. So just take some time curled on your side and feel this little forward bend here. Good. So come on up, and I'm just going to continue the journey up the spine here. So what I would like to do here is I would like to pretty much put the shoulders on this bolster, except have the arms free. So have the arms so they can relax on either side of the bolster, side to side. Yeah. So I'm in a little bit, I'm in quite a bit of my upper mid spine, and then the shoulders on here. So we don't want the shoulders on it, so the bolster's restricting the arms. I want the shoulders on it, so it's kind of the lower shoulders and the upper thoracic spine, but I want the arms to go side to side. Probably if your neck is feeling something that you're not sure about, I would put something under your head. If you have the mobility and you feel good about letting the back of the head, the top of the head come to the floor, you should do that, but much better to be safe here. So a little something to support the head, or maybe a lot of something. And then, like I said, let the arms be free. So the arms are going to be side to side, and then we can just let the legs relax out. And this is nice too. It's a nice natural movement from where we were in the pelvis. So not a whole lot of compression, a little bit, yes, certainly in the mid back. But if you can sort of feel the pulling energy of this, even if you would want to bring the arms a little over the head is nice, and you kind of feel the elevation of the shoulders connected to that pelvic area. So it's pulling upward now, and now we can just relax into it. And one of the reasons that we, use a reminder of rhythm or attention to our breathing, certainly it just feels good. It just simply feels good to be conscious that you are breathing. But also, it allows us to relax into a sense of wholeness, a sense that the inhalation is in no way separate from the exhalation. The exhalation is just a natural flowing back into the inhalation. Because often when we do try to slow down to this extent, the mind, the consciousness, it can be very fragmented. So most of us, of course I'm generalizing, but most of us have busyness. The world is so incredibly busy and distracting that it causes fragmentation. We get fragmented. We live in this fragmented way. So to allow the calmness of the breath and the depth of the breath and the rhythm of the breath allows us to relax out of that fragmentation and into a more a sense of wholeness in the body, a sense of wholeness in the heart. This wholeness that is there all the time. It's innate. It's nothing we have to do to cultivate it. But when we have a habit of fragmentation and it seems like it's the norm, then it doesn't allow us a genuine and authentic connection with this sense of inner wholeness. So if the mind is a bit busy and telling you things and have some preoccupations, just keep the rhythm of the breath. And feeling the emptiness of the exhalation, the fullness of the inhalation, and knowing beneath this rhythm that the emptiness and the fullness are one.
I also think that when we really do feel this body that is breathing, when we really come to authentically connect with our breathing, to really sink into it, to really feel it, that it can just naturally evoke a very deep sense of gratitude. Not possible to get any closer to the life force, the force that animates all things, than the breath itself. And this is part of, unfixating the content of the mind and relaxing into the breath and relaxing into the body, this sense of wholeness. That we don't need an interpretation. We don't need to objectify or solidify anything when we feel this aliveness of our breathing, and just to simply be grateful for that. And come to explore that, on some level, that the only real currency that we have in our life is gratitude. And just the simple act of breathing consciously can allow us to, just sit with that. So coming out of this with the shoulders on here, one of the things that I like to do is just to roll. You can put your feet on the floor, but just roll side to side. Now, depending on your pillows, this may be a little difficult and it may not work as well. But what I'm talking about is just rolling over onto the ribs on one side, rolling over onto the ribs on the other side, extending the top arm out over your head. It's just a lovely way to connect with how your ribs are feeling. So all of this breathing, we want the intercostal muscles between the ribs to have a nice opening here. So before we come off of this, if you'd like to try this side to side, just roll and stretch. And then when you're done, we'll roll off of this again. And then let's lie flat. If you'd like to go back where we started, you're more than welcome to do that, to put the bolster or your pillows under the knees. But we'll just lie here for a few minutes and just let the body integrate all of that sort of gentle journey up the spine, if you will. Okay, so let's come on up, and I want to do this interesting kind of twist. I don't think I've done this in a while, but I was just naturally drawn to this morning, and it's just so lovely. Just a full twist, and it can be very relaxing as well. So again, I'm going to use the bolster, If you're using pillows, just mimic what we have here with the bolster. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the bolster on your right side and just sit to the left side of it. Well, that would be natural if you put it to the right side. So I'm sitting towards the back of my bolster, just with my knees bent under me. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lean over the bolster. So I'm just bringing my lower belly over and my chest over. But so you may start feeling a little lumbar twist here as well. Yeah. And then if you're able to, we're going to take the left ear and put it onto the bolster. So this is going to accentuate the twist quite a bit. If this is feeling like a little too much or you're tentative, you can put something under the head. So I've just put my other bolster on and it's not as deep here. So you can support the head as much as you need to, putting this left ear so you're looking to the right. So I have my knees, my buttocks on the floor, my knees to the left, bent behind me a bit, just in a relaxed way. My torso draped over the bolster or your pillows. And then I'm going to try to put my left ear on the bolster. Yeah, and just the more you relax down into it, kind of feel this neck just spiraling all the way down into that sacral spine. And again, especially with something like this, if this is unfamiliar, set yourself up so you can spend the time here, but just allow yourself to sink into it. So in order to do that, the sinking in, the melting, you need to feel safe. You need to feel like this is sustainable, it's safe, and that you can progressively soften over time. So I'm looking to the right, left ear on the bolster, buttocks and legs on the floor, body draped over it. And just see if you can find some peace, even if the body is making some demands or has some complaints. These positions are meant to evoke certain places, contractions of density in the body, so you can listen to them. So as long as you feel safe, we don't have to push them away. We don't have to complain. We just want to appreciate that the body is responding. your body simply has this capacity to hold, residues of your, outer and inner experiences. And these residues become held. This is what I'm referring to as density. So we have an open, flowing, interconnected system, and the influences of life itself, of our inner emotional, psychological world, then create these residues of density, and they begin to slowly over time pull us out of alignment. They begin to hurt. They begin to call for our compassion and care. This is what I was saying earlier, that an imbalance, an internal imbalance, will reflect an external imbalance. So we're not wishing things away. We're saying, here I now have my magnifying glass out. The body has gotten my attention. Let me investigate this. Let me meditate on this.
Okay, so I'm going to recommend you move very, very slowly. This can be a bit deceptive if you're not used to doing it, and especially in the neck area. So just maybe a little micro movement first of the head back and forth to make sure you're okay here. Yeah. Yes, yes. And then what we're going to do before we do the other side, we're going to come on up and just simply sit in front of the bolster and have your bolster or pillows about arm's distance behind you. And you can just let the legs relax out since the knees were just bent, but you could pull them in if you'd like, and interlock the fingers and just place the interlocked fingers with the elbows just as straight as you're able to up on this height. And certainly if this height doesn't work for you, I understand, the shoulders are complicated. You can just interlock the fingers behind your back or bring the arms back. Again, just so you can find a level of compression that starts to bring you into these residues of density. So we don't want to think of these as fixed points that are immovable and static. They're not. The density is alive. The density has some sense of flow, and also the density has relationship to the rest of the body, the entirety of the body. So this is not a linear site-specific exploration. And let's go back to that opening breath. This is a nice place to do it when we have the shoulders pulled back, just very gently on your inhalation. Feel a sense of fullness, and however you interpret that. And on the exhalation, a quality of emptiness. And then if you'd like to have any movement with the weight of your head, use it carefully. This is a lovely thing to do slowly, because, really all of yoga postures, no matter what style you want to point to, is really just playing with angles of range of motion.
It's just how we move into that range of motion and what we're exploring. Okay, good. So let's release the arms. Yes. And let's prepare to do the other side of this lovely twist. So again, we're going to sit next to the bolster. So I have my bolster to my left this time, obviously. And I'm sitting, depending on the length of the torso, I'm sitting towards the back of my bolster. But if you have pillows, just want to support the torso. So I'm just sitting with my legs folded under me. And then we can relax the torso over the bolster. So we want that supported. And this time I'm going to look to the left and place my right ear on the bolster. And again, just feeling this twist. If this side is a little bit more restricted, like I suggested, put something, I'm putting a little blanket here to rest my right ear on. Maybe remove it over time, maybe not. And we'll just sink into it on this side. The future is inside us. It is not somewhere else. I would actually sing that to you, but that is a kind of discomfort I would not want to inflict on you. The discomfort of the postures is plenty. And again, if you begin to experience any fragmentation in the mind, the thoughts seem to be certainly unnecessary or disassociated, discursive, just simply allow yourself to relax into the fabric of the body that's not fragmented, the rhythm of your breathing that is not fragmented, And this quality of stillness, this quality of inner quiet and peace, that we don't need the theories or the philosophy or the diagnosis. We're simply relaxed. We're simply allowing ourselves to be present with whatever experience is arising. Nothing more than that. So once again, just a caution here. This is just an unusual position, especially for the upper spine. So if you can just have a little bit of micro movement first, check in to make sure you're able to navigate this safely. And then we'll come on out of this. And if you'd like a counter pose, if you'd like to come into, sometimes it's nice after the twist to come into a child's pose. You could do that if you'd like, even though we're going to forward bend soon. Or just lie down and relax on your back or in a fetal position. So we'll take a bit of a rest here before we move on. And this really ultimately is the function of meditation. You know, if we're using meditation to cultivate a a more elevated or peaceful or blissful or ecstatic state, then we're just creating another state, another experience. The depth and the deepest function of meditation is to be as still and quiet with your sense of self, however you recognize that, and then have a little time and space between whatever's being experienced. So we get to see that, my mind is doing this, my heart is doing this, my body is doing this. And just leave those experiences as they are. So we're getting to observe how experience is arising and how experience is then dissipating, dissolving. But we don't want to create more experiences because we just then get entangled in them, we get attached to them. So we rest within this presence, we rest within this stillness. And then we notice, this is my experience. So it's a very simple but yet profound way to approach this yoga. And the asana itself is just really a container. We're just holding this container, the body, and then we can see, yes, physical residue, density, discursive thinking, energy of the heart. And let it reveal itself. Give it the time and give it the respect for it to reveal to you, not for you to superimpose what you think it is. Okay, so let's come on up, and I want to come forward, and I just want to make this suggestion. I just do this periodically just as a reminder in some of these forward bends that there's typically two factors. So when we're coming into any forward bend, there's typically two primary things that restrict us. One would be the ligamentation that has become contracted, the muscles that have become contracted, the intrinsic muscles of the lower back, but also the tilting of the pelvis. So if my pelvis is tilted back a bit and I try to come forward, it's going to restrict my coming forward. So sometimes it's beneficial
maybe this is a bit too much of a pad, but sometimes it's beneficial to sit up on just the end. I wouldn't sit on it flat because that would just replicate the floor. But if I sit up on the edge of this and let my pelvis tilt forward, as you see, so there's my pelvis tilting back, there's my pelvis tilting forward, it can relieve some of that restriction. Then you're just dealing with the compression of muscle and bone on bone and ligamental restriction. So this is just something to explore. And this isn't really too much, but you can play with the height of this. So that's what we're going to do. Whether you support yourself or not, that would be up to you. But we're simply going to come into a lovely butterfly by bringing the soles of the feet together, not pulling the heels in too much, but letting the hips breathe and gently relaxing that lumbar area and just snuggling into the forward bend. If you feel there's too much body weight that's pulling, this is why you have support up front if you need it, to really make sure you're controlling and being able to modify the amount of weight that pulls into these areas. And just one more thing about what I've been sharing about the fragmentation of the mind. And this is something to explore for oneself. It's a very interesting contemplation that very often the excessive discursive thinking, when we feel like we just cannot turn the mind off, one thought triggers another thought, and we're just caught in this labyrinth of thinking. Very often, this excessive discursive thinking is physical energy trapped in the body. It's when the pathways of flow, the pathways of prana get blocked. So this energy has nowhere to go and it just jumps up to the mind. So this is so important to very slowly compress and release, massage and open the physical body. So we open up these nadis, these pathways, these meridians, so energy can move and flow and keep us in a state of equilibrium physically. And then the mind can just naturally calm, and we can use the mind for its, creative brilliance that it's for, instead of just running. It doesn't need to run all the time. A lot of our thoughts are just habitual, and a lot of them are just useless. So let's very slowly roll up from here. And let's open the legs out just to an angle that feels comfortable for your hips. So I am not suggesting to your full range of motion. But again, like I said earlier, that's what we're doing. We're playing with these angles of range of motion. So you just find a place, not only for the relaxation of the hips, but the back of the legs as well. So if you go to your fullest straddle, it's going to affect the three major muscles of the hamstring very differently than if you're in here, or even if you're hip width distance. So anywhere that you feel you're open to exploring with the legs forward. The same thing here though, if the pelvis is tilting back, it's going to restrict you in a way. So you may want to sit up on the edge of something, tilt the pelvis forward a bit, relaxing the lower back muscles, using some support. I mean, here you can relax on your hands if you can keep the shoulders relaxed. Sometimes this is nice if you want to pendulate a bit and, deepen in and then withdraw out and just in and out a little bit. So again, using the passive motion to explore, not to distract, or you could go to your forearms. So whatever feels most supportive. Drifting inward, breathing gently. And listening to the sensitive intelligence of the body itself. This quantum connective tissue consciousness. Good. So let's come on up from here. And then your choice to either go right back to where we were with just the soles of the feet together with no support. So we'll replicate that, or to go back to where we were, but put the bolster under the knees. So this will just obviously relax the hips a little bit. So either one of those, either with the continued support, or again, no support right where we were, and we'll just continue this way. And you may want to try each one to see, really allow your body to invite you to where you're going to go. It depends on how the lower back muscles and the ligaments have responded so far. So it's always shifting and changing a bit. We just never want to make these decisions, from the place of the ego of thinking how it should look, or we can do it and we're going to give it 150% and all that. Always allowing the body to invite us, the pose, how long we hold it, all of these things are just suggestions. And then the body will then take over and invite you to adjust, to modify, to withdraw, to stay longer, to breathe a certain way. And see if you can get a visceral sense of this slowing down. So oftentimes we can be, in an asana holding still, but there's still this movement, this internal quickening, this mental energy that's shrouding everything. This practice is meant to be slow. It is slow. It is patient. So we want to see if we can synchronize in with this feeling of slowness. It's a very, very beneficial. It's essential to our deeper sense of well-being. And just allow your mind and your body and your breath and the posture just simply to be long and slow and deep. Okay, let's merge. So come on up from your forward bending and let's take a bit of a rest here. So lie down and make yourself comfortable. Take a rest. What I was saying earlier about the residues of our traumas getting uh, contracted into density. So another way we could experience this as our energy gets contracted. So this is really one of our primary studies. This self-study or this self-inquiry is studying our own internal energy. So another way we can look at this, or not really another way, but just to expand on this, putting this in a very big context, the context of what yoga is really suggesting. It's a suggestion of yoga, a teaching of yoga, is that there is only boundless energy, that's all there is boundless energy. Yeah, and you can call it what you want. If you have a favorite name for it, you can call it that. You can call it God or Buddha or consciousness or Atman or Brahman, but it's this boundless energy. Energy is a good word. Let's just go with energy. So there's this boundless energy. That's all there is. And it has no meaning or no purpose. But within that boundless energy arises a contraction. And that contraction is what we are. We are a contraction of boundless energy expressing as a human being. Some of this energy expresses as rocks and trees and planets and bugs. But we have this great privilege to be contracted as a human being. So this is very beautiful. This is a yogic contemplation that we can look at it from many, many different angles. And what I'm suggesting is there's a correlation between the contraction we feel in our body that we want to diagnose as pain or discomfort or disease, whatever you want to call it, and the larger contraction of our sort of universal compacting into a human being. Because ultimately, this contraction of this universal energy, we then feel a sense of a center. We feel that I'm real, but also that I'm separate. And this feeling that I'm real and I'm separate is nothing more than this contraction. So this is very beautiful. We get to bring our awareness right to the body itself, the direct interface of the soma, the physicality, and explore what are these energetic contractions. We also get to bring our awareness, our meditation, to what is this contraction that I feel a center, that I feel real, and that I feel separate. And is the reality that I am just simply a
a manifestation of this unbounded energy. And I just happen to show up in this moment as a human. Okay, so let's come on up. Let's bring that contracted energy you call yourself up. And I want to do this, this particular position a little bit differently than you might be used to doing it. A little bit more intense in the hip area and the piriformis area, but quite worthy. So again, we're using the large bolster. If you don't have the large bolster, pillows will suffice. And what I'm going to, let me angle this way. What I'm going to suggest here is to take the right leg. And so we have the bolster in front of us horizontally. Yep, side to side, hip to hip. And take the right leg and put it over the bolster. Take the left leg and just stretch it behind you. So it's like we would be doing like a pigeon pose or a sleeping swan pose. But what I'm going to suggest here is to bring the right hip up on top of the bolster. Oh boy. Yep. And we're going to try to keep the hips pretty even here. Then this right leg that's in front, you can keep it at a 90-degree angle. It'll, just like the unsupported pose, it will stress the knee quite a bit. Oh, there I am. And the back leg, we don't need to force it out, but forcing it out, you're going to get a nice pull. It's better to keep the hips even on the bolster if you can. So I have the right hip up on the bolster, the right leg in front of me. I'm going to pull it in towards the bolster so I don't put too much pressure on my knee. And then just allow your body to fold over this. Yep. So we want to keep the hips fairly even on the bolster, especially that right buttocks. And then we'll relax down over this. The left leg can stretch out if you'd like. The knee can bend a little bit. And then we'll relax down from here. So this just adds, again, we're shifting the angle of the range of motion. If it is completely awkward, you don't like it, it's not working, maybe give it a minute or two and see if you can find the beauty in it. If not, you can just remove the bolster and just come into a swan position. That would be sleeping, coming over the leg. Good. So I hope that was relatively clear. It's hard to articulate all the angles and the different things, but we're going to have the right buttocks up on the bolster, or the pillows work. The right leg is at a relatively 90-degree angle in front. Back leg is stretched out. And you're just going to let your body weight come down. And you can stack your fists if you like. You can put a pillow for your head, or you can just let your head come all the way down. And if you're feeling something up the side of that right leg headed towards the knee, that's very good. That's the IT band. That's a band of fascia that's really, really tight on most of us and affects the knees and the hips. So maybe I just should clarify one thing on the last thing I was talking about. So what I was saying is that there is only boundless energy without meaning or purpose. And then the experience of being a real and separate self is simply a contraction of that energy. So the question would obviously arise, well, where does meaning and purpose come from if this, let's say, this divine pulsation of energy, boundless, uncontracted, has no purpose or meaning? Well, that's the beauty. We get to give our
experience purpose and meaning. We're the ones doing it. And uh, yoga provides the invitation that once we discover this, this is the basis of real freedom. Real freedom is understanding that we have that capacity to assign meaning and purpose. It's not inherent in external objects. So if any part of your body or your mind or your heart feels contracted, we can always approach it with the breath, because the breath is not contracted. And we can always hold ourselves in a way to explore ourselves, that this contraction, this density, is merely a moment uh, of disharmony, you might say, that overall our energy is in harmony. Yes, when our digestion is working and our heart is pulsating and our cells are communicating, this is a sense of energetic harmony. When something becomes overly contracted, then it's simply out of harmony with the overall system. So really being able to feel this is visceral, this is somatic, to start to feel ourselves as rhythm and energy and harmony. Because the thoughts themselves are just separate little chunks of knowledge that cannot permeate. We want to permeate, we want to saturate with our awareness of harmony, our awareness of breath, our awareness of life. And not to say that the thinking doesn't have its purpose, because it certainly does, but it's not in charge, and it's somewhat limited. Good. So if you still have your hips up on this bolster and you're in the position, let's come on up. And before we come out of it, let's just press the hands on the floor, just like we do without it. And just bring the chest up and back a bit, and just feel a nice little backward bend here, maybe sway a little bit. maybe rock that right hip on the bolster a little bit. Again, a little passive movement. And then we can sit back. So we'll bring that right hip off of the bolster. And we'll just take a moment here while we're setting up for the other side. So same thing, obviously, for the other side. We'll approach the bolster and we'll take this left leg and put it over it. And then we have to just get up on it. So as I'm putting the right leg back, both hands on the bolster, and I'm bringing this left hip up onto the bolster. Yep. So my hips now are relatively even. If I straighten this leg out and it pushes them uneven, don't sacrifice that. So if you need to keep that back knee bent, that's fine. Just a little bit of tugging on this right hip. Yeah, and again, we don't need to keep the front leg exactly 90 degrees. You can bring it in. So just explore with that. And then very slowly, we'll bring the body down. And again, place your head, either you can stack your fists or the back of your hands or come all the way down. Or you could even put more, if you need to and want to, would like to, you could put some more bolstering up front so you can support your body weight. Also, our willingness to move very slowly into the body.
and to be conscious of this, to be conscious and awakened in a way to this body as contracted energy. It allows us to become more and more aware that we often have very deeply protected areas in the body. In some places we may not even be able to feel. So it's one thing to feel discomfort. It's another thing to have areas that feel dormant or stagnant or numb. So this is the benefit, if you will, of just moving slowly. We don't want to force anything. We don't want to have a predetermined process. And this is the value of learning, that we have edges. We have physical and emotional and psychological edges, and we need to be prepared to move into them. So we move into someplace, we feel something, we observe, we evaluate, and then we determine, do I stay here or do I back away a little bit? Do I hover? Do I breathe? Do I take a mental note? Do I listen for insight? There's no, there's really no map. This internal environment of ours is a territory really without a map. So we're open to this experience as it's arising. And as we become more conscious and as we trust the body more and become more grounded, we can then see these protected areas that we have more access to them than we thought. And what's very interesting is that very often what we are sure is purely physical contraction has these tendrils and these tentacles that are holding something emotionally. And this emotional contraction that we're certain is just emotional has a pathway to something we're holding in our mind. A repetitive pattern, a preoccupation in the mind that we're certain is just something we need to work out psychologically, has very deep roots in the body.
Okay, so once again, let's come on up from this. And we're going to take a moment, if you would like, to just press up and open the chest, bring the shoulders back, maybe have a little movement onto that hip, maybe a little moaning and groaning if you'd like. Ay, ay, ay. Oh. And then when you're ready, you can sit back off of your bolster and remove it. And let's lie down and take a rest.
And I do think that just as we endeavor to be compassionate and gentle with our physical body, it's the same thing with our mind. It's a very delicate mechanism. And sometimes when we're doing certain practices, these ideas arise that thinking is not welcome or not appropriate. And this is somewhat ridiculous because it's a beautiful thing. It's a powerful thing. So our thinking, even though it's wonderfully creative and we want to honor and respect it, it's also limited. It really can't know the nature of life. It can't know who we are. It doesn't know how it all works. So I think to have a certain perspective, to be able to honor the body and honor the heart and honor the mind in its appropriate place, that it's wonderfully creative, but it can't really tell us what's happening. It can't really tell us what's going on. It can store knowledge and then reference that knowledge. So it's a lovely, amazing servant for us. It's a tool to use, but it's not in charge. And it likes to tell us that it's in charge. I mean, mostly it's a survival tool, the thinking. And I think one of the thoughts, at least from a yoga perspective, the thought that we want to really bring our magnifying glass to and examine is this me thought, that there is a me here, that there is a someone here. But ultimately, this thought is just another thought. So we want to put our thoughts in perspective, put our feelings in perspective, put our body in perspective, and let them intermingle, let them work in harmony. But the thoughts themselves, the thinking mind, it's a lovely tool and very valuable. And like I said, it's wonderfully creative, but it is, again, it's not in charge. The accumulation of great amounts of knowledge is in no way wisdom. Wisdom comes from this intermingling, this balance of the soma and the emotions and the mind. So our energy is flowing freely and we can access our intuition in this connective tissue consciousness that is not linear. Okay, let's come on up, please. And yes, so what I'm going to offer here is a lovely backward bend with the knees bent back. And I know this is not for everyone, but what I'm going to suggest is you can do, so I'm going to use the bolster vertically. Yes. The bolster vertically, we're going to sit in front of the bolster. So if you are able to bend your knees, but not go back over the bolster, what I suggest is give them some attention. Spend some time with them here. Bend them. You can also come out of it and release them if it's too much. Obviously, if you have an injury, be super careful. So often when I'm working with my knees, and I need to take the time, or especially when I was rehabilitating him in the past, I would come into the knee bent position for a while, and then all the way out of it, you can come to tabletop and just release them. And they're like, oh, okay. And then go back in, and you'll feel this sort of micro movement, the ligaments and the joint capsule and the synovial fluids all, feeling safe. So you could do this for some time, and then if you feel like you're able to, you can come into the backward bend. So the end of the bolster tucked in the lumbar spine, and then right up the spine so it's supporting you and you can rest your head on it. Lovely for the quadriceps, again, something into the psoas here. If not, if you work on the knees for a couple of minutes and you're like, okay, that's enough, but there's no way I can go back, it's just not happening right now, then you can release the knees, relax them out, and
just come into the backward bend without the knees bent, either with just your pillows back or your bolster. And you could also put a little extra something back here. So if you'd like to go deeper into the backward bend, you can build this up. So even this little blanket is much more compression into my lumbar spine, keeping the buttocks on the floor. Or you could go the other way and say, even this is a little bit too much. I'm not sure, it doesn't feel so good. So you could take that same blanket and sit on it, and then you've brought it down, the intensity down several degrees, and come into the backward bend. So I guess what I'm suggesting, if you're not going to bend the knees back for the entirety of the backward bend, give them a little something, because to ignore them will ultimately lead to a sense of fragility and brittleness, and the synovial fluids, you'll start to dehydrate. And once the knees are affected, the ankles will be affected, the hips will be affected. You could even sit up on the bolster initially. So you don't have to sit between the heels. This may be just enough, and sort of experiment. So you're compressing, releasing, and then the backward bend without the knees bent. So either one of those choices, that's what we'll do. Only to make sure, though, you are relaxed. You're allowing the body to receive the compression. We're not forcing it, holding the quality of slowing down. The inhale breath is fullness. The exhale breath is emptiness. Fullness and emptiness are one. Fullness and emptiness are the same thing.
this is very valuable to contemplate that you are thinking, your thoughts are not in charge. It's just another form of contraction when we allow our thoughts to be in charge, to direct, to mandate. This boundless energy needs no one in charge. There is no one in charge. It's free, it's open. This is the nature of this is just the nature of our beingness. This is what the yogi simply contemplates this, and cultivates this freedom, this openness, this boundlessness. And then we are creative with the contractions that come from that. We are creative with our life, with our body, with the mind, with the heart. It's a way for us to be expressive and to be creative. So we want to be open. We want to be open to learning and loving and living, because that's the nature of life, is openness. So if you would like to begin to come out of your backward bend, this would be a good time to do that. If you would like to continue in your backward bend, of course you are welcome to do that. You can take your own shavasana and relax. You can sit up with me, and we will prepare to close our yoga. The only true currency we have in this life is gratitude. Namaste.